Hello, I'm Odin, and today I'm going to make a brand new item that's from the video game Dungeon Fighter Online. I'm making one of the new demonic Lancer class weapons used by the Vanguard. Just in case you don't know, let me tell you a little bit about Dungeon Fighter Online. With fast-paced gameplay and unique retro-style side-scrolling 2D action, Dungeon Fighter Online is a free-to-play, beat-em-up, massively multiplayer online role-playing game chosen by over 700 million players worldwide. Just this week, the Demonic Lancer class will get his Neo Awakening. This means the character will have access to new and even more powerful skills. There'll also be an event to help you level up and get better gear for your Demonic Lancer character. There'll be lots of special buffs to make you stronger in dungeons, and your town movement speed will be increased. Also, receive items and gear every time you reach target levels in the game. And Dungeon Fighter Online has events that'll help new players along on their journey. And it has an equipment rental service that allows you to rent some of the most powerful gear and weapons in the game. Dungeon Fighter Online is supported by an active community with a presence on Discord, Reddit, and there's developer streams on Twitch. Check out Dungeon Fighter Online using the link in the description of this video. And if you use my special coupon code, not only will you be supporting my channel, but you get yourself a pile of silver and a special gold cape. The new Vanguard weapon appears to change its size and shape just a little bit in the game. So I made a full-size paper pattern using character sketches of the new weapon. I scaled my weapon to be close to the compact 2-meter size. There also appears to be a larger 3-meter version, but I'm going to hold off on that one. I can use 3/4 PVC pipe as a core for building the lance. The PVC is the thin-walled type, which lets me fit a painter's extension pole inside of the pipe. Now the painter pole unscrews so the lance can be shorter and fit in my car once it's finished. And I attach a small wooden dowel to the end to support the main blade. The pole is made to come apart at one of the decorative nubs on the grip, so I glue a wedge of HD foam around the pipe end and cut a couple of shapes to add where the main blade starts. Okay. So that can make that piece. See, as it goes through on an angle, that's going to be interesting to figure out. Now these are just the bulk shapes for right now. I'm going to carve them down to be the correct shape once I start carving all the details that go on the main blade. And that main blade looks really cool. It's a demonic lance, so it has a big yellow eye set in what looks like an organic bone-like structure. I'm going to make the organic portion from 2 layers of floor mat foam, glued onto a layer of 4mm foamed PVC board. The PVC board will keep the blade stiff, because I need to cut out all these holes, and if it was only 2 layers of foam, they'd pretty much flex and bend right where the holes are. Once I have foam glued to both sides of the PVC sheet, I can cut out the basic shape with my bandsaw. Now I could do this with a snap-off blade or some other hand tool, but the saw is faster for me, and I can always get a 90-degree cut on all the edges, which is really important when I cut the blade in half, and I need to do that so it'll fit around the PVC pipe core. Adding the extra small wooden dowel is kind of fun because I don't typically do that, so the odd shape makes it a little more of a challenge for the fit. To make the holes that go in the blade, I first drill a pilot hole inside the part that I don't want, and then I slip a spiral blade through the pilot hole and reconnect the blade to my scroll saw. The spiral blade is a special blade that lets me cut from any direction, so I can kind of cut side to side and even pull the material towards me. I don't have to just push it into the saw, which is so much easier to do with these irregular shaped holes. After all the holes are cut out, I add some 6mm strips to make a channel for the small wooden dowel to fit into. 2 layers of foam and the PVC board is almost the same thickness as the PVC pipe. This extra channel helps keep that wooden dowel centered in the blade. Before I add glue, I rough up the PVC pipe with a wire brush to give it some tooth, because all of these little scratches will give the glue something to hold on to. That's important because it's pretty easy to remove dry glue from smooth PVC pipe. And I'm going to be using contact cement for almost all of this build. You apply the cement to both pieces that you're gluing, Then let it mostly dry, because once it's mostly dry, the cement becomes sticky, and that's when you can stick your pieces together. And right here, I added some paper in between the walls of the channel and the wooden dowel, because I can remove the paper once the dowel is in the right place. Without that paper, the two parts would just stick as soon as it touched any part of the channel, and probably not the part that I want. Now, I haven't really showed this half before. This is the bottom half of the lance, and it also has one of those bulk shapes, which I'm now starting to carve down. What I want to do is I want to keep the center line because it looks like a bamboo joint, or maybe where two bones meet up. And the rest is just sanded away with my rotary tool and my sanding drum. I change bits for a grinding bit, and I carve all the curves, all the rounded edges, and all the wrinkles and swoop shapes into the center organic bone of the main blade. Now this takes a little bit of carving skill, having an idea of where to carve, and controlling the rotating bit so it doesn't run away from where you're working, or just knowing how to fix it if it does. And it does. A lot, even for me. So I've got the inner bone structure done. If you look at the artwork, it looks like the inside of this particular weapon has kind of a dragonish bone structure. I mean, it's got a big eye, so it's pretty easy to think that it's organic in some way. But then it has the blades that are attached to it. Now I want to make the blades very clean so they look like metal. My plan is to cut and glue on some 6mm HD foam and make them work out to be the two blades. I'll need to trim these so they fit, but I got these two. I need to put a big one here and the biggest one that comes up off the top, so I'll be doing that now. The blades are made from two pieces of 6mm HD foam, and these two blades intersect each other. I mark where I need to cut the tip, and then attach the blade with contact cement. I flex the blade open a little so it wraps over the carved organic piece. I line up the lower back blade and mark my cut. When I glue it on, I start the cut at the seams to make sure that they match. I had also cut the floor mat parts on an angle so the blades can fit. Everything is just a 45-degree angle cut. There are 5 spikes that stick out of this blade, so I cut my pattern and use my pattern notcher to mark the center of each spike and mark the spike placement on the blade. I decided to get the other 2 big blades attached first and then add the spikes. Now I'm going to cut the blade from 6mm HD foam, and I make it a little bit bigger than the drawing. I copy the first side to make the second, and then the leading edge is cut on an angle, again, but it's about 45 degrees, and you can see where I cut them by hand, because about 45 degrees is fine. I also cut the bone center on an angle as well. This will give the blade a better fit. There are uneven sections. It's better to grind them down than to have lumps on the blade. I glue the blade together, and I make sure that the center of the blade doesn't twist. I keep it as straight as I can. And there have been lots of test fitting along the way, and I'm going to be doing more. Apply contact cement, and this time I decided to start at the top, matching the corners from my pattern. And I stretch the blade a little to make sure that it's making contact with the base. Now I'm not trying to stretch it to make it longer, I'm just getting it to fit correctly. While I was waiting for the glue to dry on the last blade, I started to work on the big center blade. Now this one's really interesting because it fits over the bone center and runs right up to the eye. I glue these on one side at a time, matching the back corner of the blade for an accurate fit. Now you can see the corner guide that I have here, and on the other side it's stuck on. It's also going to make a hollow space near the tip. Now I have an idea for that, which I forgot to film. But what I did is I cut another blade shape, just like this one up here. I flattened the edge and then glued it to the back of the main blade. Now the art from the game does not have this extra back cutting edge, but I like the way this looks. Now getting back to actually making the blade, I'm very careful to not warp it while sticking the sides together. Never pull on one of the other sides because that will definitely warp it and bend it. I'm very happy with how this is turning out. Everything is lining up and it's looking pretty good. I make the back spikes next. They're all cut from a 20mm HD foam triangular dowel. I just cut and glued 2 of them together to make a corner. On the first couple, I marked where they needed an angle to be cut on the back side as well. But after making that first cut, I still felt like they needed an additional trimming, to make them more interesting. This causes the outside edges to curve slightly, and the thinner tips just look better. I still trimmed them to match the blade. I clean up all the seams around the blade, removing excess glue and the little foam bits that always appear at the seams. And that should be about it for the blades. So it needs an eye, which, is actually one of the things that drew me to this particular weapon, is that, once again, it's another big bladed weapon with an eye on it. But in this case, it's a much smaller eye, and I can use a cat toy. I cut the cat toy not quite in half, but close. These are solid EVA foam balls, which is pretty cool because I can just stick the eyes in place with contact cement. And since they're solid, they're not going to dent or crush. I cut wedges to add lines and wrinkles around the eye. Now these are more stylized than the sculpted eyes I've done before, and I like the way these are looking. To make these wedges, I'm just trimming the leftover foam from cutting the knife edges. And I also cut an off-center cone-shaped piece, and it's glued in right where the grip attaches. I glued in more of the wedge pieces to fill in the gaps. I grind the excess off to make them fit and to just kind of clean up the edges in general. I wrap some 2mm foam just under this bone joint, mostly to cover the PVC pipe. One of the last things to do on this half of the lance are the loops that fit right behind the barbed blade. I cut a basic shape from the leftover foam stacks that I had from making the main blade. I sanded them down with a rotary tool to make them rounded, and then glued them individually onto the lance. I still need to finish the other end of the lance, the pommel end. I have the core made for the sickle blade that goes back here. And I trace it to make the blade covers, which are traced and cut out just like all the main blades. The core piece was cut from one of those extra thick kneeling pads that I can get from a hardware store. I wrap the lower part of the grip with some 2mm red What The Foam. It hides the slick PVC pipe and it feels better for a grip. I cut the pattern by wrapping a piece of aluminum foil and duct tape, and then I cut the red foam into 4 equal parts. And once all these new pieces are glued on, I sand the edges down to be smooth and clean up the ends. And I had done the same thing on the upper half as well. I have all the parts cut and ready to make this end of the lance. All the black pieces were cut from the same kneeling pad. I carved some of the thicker parts down, that way there's less material to just grind off. And I stick the core onto the blade cover. And sand down the core, removing the sharp corners and making it rounded. I also sand down the PVC cover piece. And that loop thing that'll go under the blade. I did a lot of grinding and a lot of sanding for this project, but I really like how this is looking. I test fit the parts. The biggest challenge here was getting the angle on the sickle blade to be correct. I adjust the blades to line up so that they look good. I was also keeping an eye on which way the lower blade goes, because I don't want to put it on backwards. So I marked the correct placement of the parts, and that way I can glue them back on with some urethane glue and they'll be in the right spot. I add the blade with some contact cement. I cut wedges out of the bottoms of the blade thorns. Remember, they were cut from solid kneeling pad foam. And they are attached with contact cement. To glue on the final Achilles tendon bone thing that goes under the blade, I put pieces of paper over the dried contact cement, which let me adjust the placement until I was happy with it. And then I can pull the pieces of paper out and I'll get the part stuck right where I want it to go. That's the pommel. This is the small end, right? This is the back end. This is pretty freaking cool. This is neat just all on its own, but this is only half of it. Good, they line up. I tried, and looks like I succeeded. This is pretty cool though. I like the way this looks a lot. Okay, it's been a few days. I've been trying to get this done. I wanted to get this done quickly, right? That was like part of the goal. Hey, can I get this? No. I spent a lot of time grinding and a lot of time shaping, but I'm really happy with how this looks. So now I get to cover it with Plasti Dip and paint it. I sprayed everything with a couple of coats of black Plasti Dip spray. And after it dries, I'm able to start dry brushing the colors onto the main body. In the artwork, it's mostly black with just a hint of red. So what I want to do is just dry brush the organic parts with lighter and lighter versions of red. Now this takes a little while because red is really hard to cover over black, but that's partly why I'm using a larger brush. And it does eventually build up and I get the red look that I want. Now all the blades are painted with a silver paint and I'm using acrylic paint. That way it's easy to clean up with water, but that'll also let me paint the next couple of colors onto the blades because there's a little more black on the main blade and then lots of red organic marks on all the other blades and on the grips. The wrinkles around the eye actually look more like tiny little blades in the art, not just wrinkles. That's why I use wedge cut foam around the eyes and not foam clay. The eye is a deep yellow base, and that's ringed with some red with some lines in it. And I add in a black pupil with some of the little spots. And just like the last eye that I made using a cat toy, once the paint is dry, I coat the eye with some 5-minute epoxy, give it a permanent shine. All the materials used for this project I already had in my shop. I'll put a list in the description. All right, this is cool. When Dungeon Fighter Online first contacted me and said, hey, we want you to make a lance from the game, I was thinking, no, long pointy stick. You know I love demonic weapons, you know I love monster weapons, I love rubber monsters. This is really cool. So seriously, Dungeon Fighter Online, thank you guys very much. Thank you for being a sponsor for this video and giving me a chance to actually build one of the weapons based off of the new characters that just dropped this week. So for everyone else, if you want to check out Dungeon Fighter Online and see the new character class that literally just dropped this week, well, it's not a new class, I should say. It's a new upgrade. It's the Neo Awakening for this character class. Please check it out. I've got a link in the description of this video. And if you download Dungeon Fighter Online and use the coupon code I got down there, you'll score yourself some extra stuff. I think it's some silver and a gold cape. And you'll help support my channel and help show Dungeon Fighter Online that you like the video and that maybe they want to come back and do something again, because there's a lot of really fun weapons in that game. But I know that there's going to be lots of different ways you can make a large monster weapon from a very successful MMO that's been around for well over 10 years. But this is how Odin makes. Yep, orange actually totally works. Hi, camera. Yep, orange actually totally works. Hi, camera. I want to thank Ralph Morick, Captain Kuhn, Carl Nahr, and all of my Patreon supporters. Patreon members at the $5 and above level get access to my private Discord, which includes weekly games with me, prop-related chat, and early access to live streams. My Patreon support is the #1 thing that makes this show possible. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe. Have an idea for something for me to make? Please leave a comment below. And if you make any of these projects, you can send me a picture.